Hey y'all, my name is Gregory Agid. Today, I wanted to talk about our Greek modes. Welcome back to another lesson video. My name is Gregory Agid. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you're returning, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about our Greek modes. At the most basic level, modes are simply scales that are derived from a home key. Let's use C major as an example. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Normally, we play our major scales starting from the root. We can create various other scales if we start the major scale from different scale degrees. For example, in the key of C, instead of playing a C major scale from C to C, if we start on the second scale degree, we'll have a new and unique scale. If we start a major scale from the third scale degree, we'll have a different scale. When we play our major scales starting on various scale degrees, it's very normal for our ear to hear these scales as inversions of the major scale. However, each one of these scales is its own unique tonality and scale. Every major scale contains 7 notes. Therefore, we can create 7 different modes from a major scale. Each one of these modes has a unique name, and they're often referred to as the Greek modes. Playing a C major scale starting from the root is called C Ionian. Playing a C major scale starting from the second note is called D Dorian. Playing a C major scale starting from the third note is called E Phrygian. Playing a C major scale starting from the fourth note is called F Lydian. Playing a C major scale starting from the fifth note is called G Mixolydian. Playing a C major scale starting from the sixth note is called A Aeolian. And finally, playing a C major scale starting from the seventh note is called B Locrian. Each one of these 7 scales comes from the home key of C major, meaning that they share the key signature of C major. B Locrian comes from the home key of C major. G Mixolydian comes from the home key of C major, and so on. Every major scale follows the same formula. The scale built from the root is called Ionian. The scale built from the second scale degree is called Dorian, from the third Phrygian, from the fourth Lydian, the fifth Mixolydian, the sixth Aeolian, and the seventh is called Locrian. Even though these 7 modes come from the same home key, they're each unique scales with a different sound and function. There are 3 major modes, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian, and each one of these modes is major because they contain a major third. There are 4 minor modes, Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Locrian, and each one of these modes is minor because it contains a minor third. Most often, the explanation of modes ends here, so let's dig into each individual mode and compare them to their parallel major scales. When we compare a C major scale to the C Ionian mode, we can see that C major and C Ionian have all the same notes. There are no alterations necessary. If you want to play a C Ionian scale, just play the C major scale with no alterations. When we compare D major to D Dorian, we can see that the D major scale has 2 sharps, an F sharp and a C sharp, while the D Dorian scale has no sharps. That tells me that the formula for Dorian is a major scale with a flat third and a flat seventh. To make any major scale Dorian, simply flat the third note and the seventh note. We can also find the notes of a D Dorian scale by relating it to its home key. Because Dorian is the second mode of the major scale, we can ask ourselves, what key is D the second note of? D is the second note of C. Therefore, we can play a C major scale starting on D, and that will give us a D Dorian scale. When we compare an E major scale to E Phrygian, we can see that the E major scale contains 4 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp, while the E Phrygian scale has no accidentals. That tells me that the formula to create a Phrygian scale is flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. To make any major scale Phrygian, simply flat the second, third, sixth, and seventh notes. If you want to relate Phrygian to its home key, we can remember that Phrygian is the third mode of the major scale and ask ourselves, what key is E the third note of? E is the third note of C major, Therefore, if we play a C major scale starting on E, that will give us E Phrygian. When we compare an F major scale to F Lydian, we can see that the F major scale has one flat, a B flat, while the F Lydian scale has no accidentals. That tells me that the formula for a Lydian scale is a major scale with a sharp 4. If you want to relate Lydian to its home key, we can remind ourselves that Lydian is the fourth mode of the major scale and ask, what key is F the fourth note of? F is the fourth note of C major. Therefore, if we play a C major scale starting on F, we will play F Lydian. When we compare the G major scale to a G Mixolydian, we see that G major has one sharp, F sharp, while the G Mixolydian has no accidentals. That tells me that the formula to create a Mixolydian scale is a major scale with a flatted seventh. If you want to create a Mixolydian scale, start with the major scale and flat the seventh note. If you want to relate Mixolydian back to the home key, we can remember that Mixolydian is the fifth mode of the major scale and ask ourselves, what key is G the fifth note of? G is the fifth note of C. Therefore, if we play a C major scale starting on G, that will give us a G Mixolydian scale. When we compare an A major scale to A Aeolian, we can see that the A major scale has three accidentals, an F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, while the A Aeolian has no accidentals. That tells me that the formula to create an Aeolian scale is play a major scale with a flat 7, flat 3, and flat 6. Start with a major scale and flat the 7th, the 3rd, and the 6th. That will get you an Aeolian scale. If you want to relate Aeolian to its home key, we can remember that Aeolian is the 6th mode of the major scale, and we can ask ourselves, what key is A the 6th note of? A is the 6th note of C. Therefore, if we play a C major scale starting on A, we will get the A Aeolian scale. When we compare B major to B Locrian, we can see that B major has 5 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp, while B Locrian has no accidentals. That tells me that the formula for Locrian is flat 2, flat 3, flat 5, flat 6, and flat 7. If you want to create a Locrian scale, start with the major scale and flat the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th notes. If you want to relate Locrian to its home key, we can remember that Locrian is the 7th mode of the major scale and ask ourselves, what key is B the 7th note of? B is the 7th note of C. Therefore, if we play a C major scale starting on B, we will get a B Locrian scale. I personally think it's a lot easier to think of Locrian as a major scale starting from the 7th note. It's too complicated for me to remember all the flatted notes. You can use all these formulas to help you find different modes. Each mode correlates to a different chord change, and this is called a chord-scale relationship, and these are usually the scales we use to improvise in the jazz language. Finally, I want to share the various chords that these modes will correspond to. If you see a major 7 chord, I would play the Ionian mode. If you see a minor 7th chord, I would recommend playing the Dorian mode. If you see a chord notated as Phrygian or sus flat 9, I would recommend playing the Phrygian mode. If you see a major 7 sharp 11, I would recommend playing the Lydian mode. If you see a 7th chord, that will correlate to the Mixolydian. If you see a chord with Aeolian next to it, that's going to correlate with the Aeolian mode. In jazz, it's fairly uncommon to see the Aeolian mode. And finally, if you see a chord that says minor 7 flat 5 or a circle with a slash in it, that's going to be the Locrian mode. When improvising in the jazz idiom, you're most often going to encounter 4 of these modes. You'll use the Ionian mode on a major 7th chord. You'll use the Dorian mode on a minor 7th chord. You'll use the Mixolydian mode over a 7th chord. And finally, on a minor 7 flat 5 or a half diminished chord, you'll use Locrian. As a little aside here, I find it really helpful to understand the home key of each of these modes. So back to the C major scale, we have C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, and so on. and each one of these chords are cousins of each other because they share the same key signature. I think it's important to understand the formulas for each mode and also understand the parent key where each of these modes come from. Thank you all very much for hanging out to the end of this video. I know this lesson was a little dense. Having a good grasp of these modes will ultimately help you in your improvisation. It'll help you understand what scales to use on various chords, and it'll help you have conversations with musicians about music theory. I hope this lesson helped you on your journey, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.